will remind everyone and tell our new people how to do it. Basically, raise your virtual hand and I will call on you, ask you to unmute yourself. I'll lower your hand and then make a comment, ask a question. You can also use the chat. And I will try to refer to the chat also, and we'll check in with both of those. But as much as possible, for the people that came tonight, we'd love to have a conversation together here. So don't be afraid to speak on the video, or leave your video off and just use audio. That's fine too. But please raise your hand if you'd like to join our conversation tonight. First of all, let me welcome you all to Books and Bars. It is December 2021. I can't believe we're at the end of this year. This is our 250th book that we've read together as a book club. We are in our 17th, we're almost to 18 years of Books and Bars. And sometimes we read more than one book for a month or a meeting. We used to do more than one. So that's why, it doesn't just work out to the math of one book a month, but 250 books, pretty impressive. Last night, we met at Urban Growler in St. Paul, and we asked around to find who maybe had been here the longest in our meeting last night, of about 50 or so people. And there were some people that thought they had read with us maybe like 80 or so books, was like the top person there last night. I don't know if anyone tonight has been with us for more than 80 books, but I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you if you've only read one book with us or this is your first one. So thanks for being here. I have been here for almost 250 books. So there's a couple times where other people have moderated and I wasn't there, but yeah, it's been a long, fun run. And this Zoom thing has just been something that we've done through COVID and pandemic times. So tonight's author is Matt Haig. He is an author for children and adults. His memoir, Reasons to Stay Alive, was a #1 bestseller, staying in the Sunday Times top 10 for 49 weeks. His children's book, A Boy Called Christmas, was a runaway hit and translated into over 40 languages. It was made into a film starring Maggie Smith, Sally Hawkins, and Jim Broadbent. His novels for adults include the award-winning How to Stop Time, The Radleys, The Humans, which reread at Books and Bars, and the #1 bestseller, The Midnight Library. He has sold over 3 million books worldwide. Really nice guy, Matt Haig. He follows Books and Bars on Twitter, and sometimes he engages. I feel like if we had something tonight that we really wanted him to comment on or answer, he probably would. So keep that in mind. I think it's at Matt Haig1, but I will look that up and share his Twitter if anyone's interested in engaging with him directly and seeing what he has to say. I'm always interested, though, in what you have to say, because you guys took the time, you read the book, and it's all about our shared perspectives. So I'm looking for, if somebody just finished it recently and maybe wants to tell us what they thought of it, they have the freshest take because it's top of mind. Anyone want to kick it off tonight? Tell us what they thought of the book. You could use our icebreaker question to ease into it and talk about other books that you've enjoyed of our past 250. Another question we asked last night was, what American author is at the top of their game right now? It was a question that was posed to me yesterday. And I started listing off authors. And then I had a few people come back to me and say, well, that person's not American. That person, that one doesn't count. And I said, you know what? I'm a citizen of the world. I don't see borders. I don't see country lines. And I was being facetious. But they gave me a hard time for that. But one of the ones I named that they told me wasn't American, we found out was American. And some people don't want Cleveland to be in America, but Anthony Doerr is from Cleveland and he is American. So All the Light We Cannot See and Cloud Cuckoo Land, I think Anthony Doerr is one of our top authors these days, just to warm us up here. I see Dr. Todd's hand is up. I will finish my comment. I said Colson Whitehead is another one who is definitely at the top of his game. But I'm interested to see what you guys think. So if you don't know what to say about Midnight Library, you want to ease into it, or you just want to talk more, think about past 250 books, what was memorable, and top American authors, top of their game. Dr. Todd, kick us off tonight. I'm calling on you.
Hey, I'm Midnight Library. So focused on that. Liked it a lot. The more I read, the more I enjoyed it, and on kind of like multiple levels. The concept of the multidimensional, I can easily resonate with, and that's a whole nother story. But the I can easily resonate with that, and that seems realistic to me. It's realistic to fold into the story. I also like how Mrs. Library Woman.
Mrs. Elm.
Thank you. Really was the symbolism of God, and I could buy into that too. That it's like, who are you? It's I am. I am what I am, and that it was something that resonated close to her, as safe and comfortable and approachable and trusting, and that had been significant in her life. So I thought that was interesting. And then when she met the other fellow, and he had somebody else that took a similar role, but was not Mrs. Elm. I also found that quite interesting, those parallels that went along with it. And I thought it was fascinating that the way that he wrote it, that twisted around to where she had the epiphany that my life, that is my root life, that I'm coming from, is the one well lived, and I enjoy it. I want to live it. That is the one where I think I will find the satisfaction. So yeah, I thought it was a good book. The ending could have been a little bit stronger. I thought it rushed for me, it rushed too quickly into happiness and bliss. And I thought there could have been a little bit more connection with it, but still loved it.
Thanks, Todd. Let me ask you, off the top of my head, this just came to me, and I want to put you on the spot, and I'll do this for anyone that wants to answer it. Who would your Mrs. Elm be, and what would your library be?
Boy, I'm wondering if my library might not actually be a library. I could see that. It would either be that or like a patient room. But then I don't know what the book would be. I resonated with the picking a book off the shelf. And so if you take that away, for me, I don't know what that would be. I have a mentor from long ago that I could see being that Mrs. Elm that I would trust. I mean, it's like automatically going somewhere where you don't challenge the individual that's in front of you. The relationship is so much that nowhere. I mean, she challenged the rooms, like, what the hell is this? This never-ending thing. Never did she challenge Mrs. Elm, and Mrs. Elm was not. She didn't take Mrs. Elm on really or do it. She would speak to some of her activities and who she was, but never did she question the credibility of Mrs. Elm. And I can see that relationship. I have a couple of people actually where that relationship could exist.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate that. I see Mark has his hand up. Mark, also from the Pacific. Talk to us.
Yeah, for me, maybe this was the wrong book at the wrong time. I have a feeling it's time travel fatigue or parallel life fatigue. My wife and I are watching Ordinary Joe at the same time, and so there's there's that going on. And I think the whole parallel lives, multiverse, it's one of those things where you get a lot of recommendations, and all of the stories are pretty strong, and they do the trick of getting you in that space of trying to think back on things you could do differently. I do like where this goes at the end in terms of her, clicking back in. I think I saw your comment on Goodreads about comparing this book, especially to a seasonal movie coming up. So that's out there too. I'd still recommend it. I think it's strong, especially if you haven't exhausted yourself with narratives like this. And then personally, I've got a short story that I wrote about similar themes that I've never made into what I would want to be a screenplay, but I've got my own envy going on as well. Because a lot of the signifiers that are in here, I think all play nice when you're sitting down as a 50-some-year-old man and you're thinking about a lot of the touches that are around the edges. You've got the pub opening, you've got music, you've got sports. It's like there's a lot of big ideas here that are kind of thrown into the mix and all come together in a way that Matt Haig wanted to construct them. And it's nice to see, but it's not my story in terms of me telling it. So take that with a grain of salt in terms of my own potential book of regrets, having that be a major regret in service of me giving this book, some shade. So.
Well, Mark, I think there's room in the genre. Obviously, it's become quite a lucrative and big space for these stories. So I don't want you to feel like there isn't still room for yours and whatever your take is on it. Because, I mean, yes, obviously, I believe this all started with, to my knowledge, it's the Christmas Carol story by Charles Dickens. Then we have variations on that. And some of the big variations that I can think of are It's a Wonderful Life, Back to the Future, and you take these three, and I know there's a ton of other ones. Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day has another twist on it, right? And I feel like we used to read maybe like one World War II book a year because there were so many good ones set in the Great War. Now I feel like it's really hard not to read something that falls into this sliding doors, It's a Wonderful Life, Back to the Future, Groundhog Day type of category. And if we look back just over the last, 12 months, Dark Matter, which more than 12 months, but I mean, that is similarly in this vein. And there's a lot of them, right?
Palm Springs is another one that got a lot of traction.
Palm Springs, right? Yeah. Really, I thought that was great. That's on Hulu with Andy Samberg. Check that one out. So there's a lot of them, right? And your mileage may vary. And what's different about this one? What's the twist on this one? What do you like or not like about this particular take on it? I myself will admit that I am a fan of these. And I feel like, especially around this time of year, I go back to that feeling that I get from Christmas Carol, and just this idea of someone wanting to be a better person or wanting to improve their life and finding a way, whether it's metaphysical or multiverse, spiritual in some way, that they do it. And so I liked it. And this is, and part of the reason why I picked it was because I thought that it does relate around the holidays and this feeling for me. But I'm totally interested in, and I would love to, whenever you're ready, to read your short story about it and see what your take is on it, Mark, because I think you're a super smart and funny guy, and I'm sure that you have something that I haven't read before. But don't be discouraged, and don't regret or hold it against the person that published it first, because guess what? There's room for many of them, because they're happening all the time, and book clubs will read them, including ours. And
the only thing I'm really challenged by in the moment with Ordinary Joe, they give a credit at the top of the series to some individual who gets credit for the idea, like original concept by this person. I've not looked it up because I don't want to be even more angry with this person, but I don't think this guy came up with this original idea that created Ordinary Joe. So look for that in the credits the next time you watch Ordinary Joe, if you're keeping up with that series.
What is Ordinary Joe? Can you tell us?
It's on NBC. I think it's NBC. one of the major networks.
So it's on ordinary TV. This is why I don't know it.
Yeah. It's
and scene. Donna Adams, you've read over 150 books with us. You're like number 2 to me tonight. Donna, everyone was like, where's Donna last night? They couldn't believe Donna wasn't there in person. They thought Donna came to the in-person and the video. And I said, you know what? She's not here tonight. She's going to be here tomorrow night. And you know what? Here you are, Donna. Thank you for being here. Talk to us.
Oh, yeah. It's good to see you. I didn't want to speak too early on this because I felt like this book was a little underwhelming for me. I loved the other Matt Haig book we read. Was it called
The Humans? The Humans. Yep.
I thought that was just a fascinating examination of what was kind of a Starman kind of a book. It was about, an alien who raised his embodying a person on Earth raised so many interesting questions about what it means to be human and relationships and all of that. So I was really excited to read this book. And I think the main thing I liked about this book was, of course, as a librarian, all the wonderful, wonderful comments about librarians and how they open doors for people. They help people find direction in life. They do it was such a ode to librarians. And okay, yeah, there was the other slider that for him, it was a video store or video library or something. But here, just this whole concept of all the different books and the description of it and so on was really quite cool. But I did feel that it was a little bit too tame for me. I sort of felt like it was too much into platitudes, really basic things that Nora learned along the way, nothing very earth-shattering. She took these different, parts of her life and learned some things from them that weren't necessarily very profound. And it just kind of meandered along. And I got a little more engaged then toward the end, where she did have that life with Ash, that realized if she had gone out for coffee with him and then, had this child, and then, the big revelation, you need love in your life. Well, duh. I mean, I thought
it's all we need. It's all we need, Donna. Maybe you
I know, but it was like, Moulin Rouge, to be loved and be loved and to love and be loved in return. I mean, it was kind of like, okay, wow. But then actually the best part of that section was, I think, her realization that she herself had made a difference in other people's lives. I mean, when she saw that, her neighbor had, really failed in his health and so on, because she hadn't taken an interest in him, and her brother too, there were just so many things that she realized she could make a difference. And that is a great lesson, I think, to realize that it's those little things where we can have an impact and change other people's lives in ways that we have no idea of at the time, even though this book was mostly about decisions she made that made a difference in her own life. But anyway, I thought it was underwhelming for me. It was just a little too sweet or something. I don't know. Jeff, you always pick kind of edgy books. This wasn't quite edgy enough for me. But
isn't it funny though? Isn't it funny? Because just last night, it was the same thing. It's like there's people who say all your books are too dark or too edgy, and then when I pick one that isn't, they're like, "How come this one wasn't dark or edgy?" And I'm like, "Well, you know what? I'm never gonna please everyone every time."
You're right.
But Donna, I thank you for your comments. I appreciate them, and I'm concerned that a couple things I posted in the chat maybe aren't visible. So I'm just going to read this. Librarians have knowledge. They guide you to the right books, the right worlds. They find the best places like soul-enhanced search engines. That is a quote from the book that I posted a little PDF of that. I don't know if you guys can see it. Could you guys see that or not? Just as a test. Okay. Todd can't see it. Donna could. Okay. See?
Well, and Jeff, one other book I want to mention that we've read was it called Dark Matter?
Yes, I mentioned it. I mentioned it. Yeah.
Wow. I thought that in terms of, having different parallel lives, that one just blew me away. I'm not a big reader of sci-fi fantasy, but
Yep.
I thought that was just the epitome of a great thinking book about taking different lives and different versions of your life.
I like that one a lot too. And I think it's different takes on the same theme and the same idea. And there's certainly, different ways to approach it. And yeah, I mean, Dark Matter went to some darker places for sure. Do you remember Life After Life by Kate Atkinson? That was a book that was in this genre, I would say also, where we also read, I forget the exact title, but The Many Lives of Harry August or something, Lives of Harry August, where there was people that were scheming and plotting and like working overtime to like send messages through different, lives with like people. And, and they all have their little tweaks and variations. And yeah, I mean, not every version of it is for everyone, but I do feel like I'm okay with reading different versions of these. I feel like at a certain point, we also were reading too many post-apocalyptic books. Like I heard from some people, especially during the last year and a half, I can't read anything that is too much like what we're living through, like Station 11 or the Rumaan Alam book that we read. Sometimes it hits too close to the current state that we're in. And it's like that same thing that Nick Hornby, who was, a little trivia for you, the first ever Books and Bars book that we read was High Fidelity by Nick Hornby. And he has a great quote in that book, and it's also in the film and in the TV series, where he talks about like, did I listen to pop music because I was sad, or was I sad because I listened to pop music? It's like, do you want to listen to sad songs when you're sad, or do you want to listen to something to cheer you up? So like when you're in this state, do you want to read things that are like that or not? And so it's like, do you want, I don't know. And it's not totally relating to this current book, but I'm just kind of branching out here and feeling it all. And I see that Rebecca's had her hand up for a while, so I'm gonna go to her. Rebecca, talk to us.
Hello.
Hi.
Donna, I agree with a lot of what you said. I am only okay on this book. And I guess I like the genre okay, but I think it would have been a much better book had it been written by a science fiction author. I think the world building could have been more dimensional than just the library and then her other life. I do think she learned all the very basic things, and that's good. But I also worry that it is too simplistic. So if someone were actually having suicidal thoughts or really questioning their value, that this would not be a good, it's too fluffy, it's too light, it's not, it doesn't give you anything but surface, I don't know, feel goods. And that may be good. That may be what we want. But for me, I just kept thinking a lot of like, well, of course you should worry about your regrets, and you should, it seems to me it's something that comes at the end of your life. Not that I'm at the end of my life, but as you grow, you learn more. And she's a young person and she hasn't had the opportunity to learn. So maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the Matt Haig was trying to say, but I think it could have been better in many ways. I did stick with it. I do agree with Dr. Todd that it gained resonance in the end only because she was finally, I don't know, learning her lessons and making positive changes. And that's always something good to see happen. But I am not in love with this book. And I'm not sure that I would read more by him unless I was really convinced of it. So, but thank you for sharing it with me. It was a good holiday story.
Thanks, Rebecca. So Rebecca, this is your first that you've read by Matt Haig. Is that correct?
I think so. Okay. And by the way, I don't know how many books I've read in Books and Bars, but it's been since 2010.
That's
so I don't know how many you that's got to be at least 100, I bet.
Yep.
I don't know that I'm Donna level, but I'm pretty high.
Yeah. Well, and we appreciate your diligence and your support that you've been with us. I always know that Books and Bars started the same year as our oldest son was born. So Books and Bars is only a few months older than our oldest son. So they will both be adults in 2022, which is a frightening thing. That Books and Bars can vote and also fight for our country, serve our country, and so can my son, which is going to be wild. But I see Kevin's hand is up. Kevin, talk to us.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to say I agree with Rebecca and Donna on this one. I wasn't a huge fan of this. Sort of overly kind of sweet and saccharine, kind of breezy, kind of cheesy. It reminded me a lot of Frederick Backman's Anxious People. And it's another one of those sort of really sort of schmaltzy books about mental health. And a lot of the plot points feel really convenient or contrived. But I don't know, it was a nice sort of breezy read. So I don't really regret reading it. But yeah, it also, I think the obvious point is it reminds everyone of It's a Wonderful Life. What is that? Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's even like a reference to Pottersville in this directly somewhere at some point. But yeah, I think compared to that, I think the contrivances work a lot more because there are multiple intersecting plot lines and conflicts to it. Whereas this, it's just sort of her and the library. And there's like 2 chapters with Hugo, and that's about it. So I wish there was sort of more complexity and more to distract from a lot of the plot contrivances.
Thanks, Kevin. I see Sue's got her hand up. Sue, talk to us.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, I like this book a lot, and I gave it a really good rating on Goodreads, but I read it about 2 months ago, and today I was trying to remember what happened. For the life of me, I could not remember much of it. So hence maybe the simplistic part. There wasn't enough kind of complex detail to grab me, but I did really enjoy it. And at the same time I was reading this, I was reading a nonfiction book for church from the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And a lot of the themes really wove together in both books. And I think the bottom line is sometimes those simple lessons you learn in life end up being those eureka moments for you, that they sound simplistic, but if you don't catch them, you don't catch them. You know, it's kind of like, well, duh, but sometimes you miss them. So I don't know, I liked it a lot. I didn't remember a lot. It's just having this discussion, it's bringing back waves, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah. So I'm remembering more, but.
Thanks, Sue. Do you remember, Sue, when we were the only ones who liked The Hotel New Hampshire by John Irving?
Oh, yes. Yes.
I see Susan likes the book too. So
a year ago.
Yeah. Good times. Well, one of the things that stood out for me, one of the quotes from the book, one of the little simple things is it's not what you look at, but what you see. And I feel like that is just such a brilliant little thing that was said. And I don't know if Matt Haig was the first one to ever come up with that or say it, but it's in this book. I forget exactly where, but it's not what you look at, but what you see. And this whole idea of, what your perspective is, which I really appreciate, which brings it back to, how we've all read the same, couple hundred books here, but we never have the same discussion and no one ever has the exact same take on it, which I just love. I see Will's got his hand up for the first time today. Will, talk to us.
Hello. I think my favorite Books and Bar book I've read was Dune, which I don't think I would have ever made it through that book had I not had to for this discussion. And I loved it, loved that world. I feel like I got a lot out of the new movie because I knew the story really well. So that was probably my favorite Books and Bar memory.
Awesome.
I liked this book. I didn't love it. I feel like I'm a little bit more positive than most of the group, but not quite enough to like strongly advocate for it. I definitely agree with what Sue is saying about the simple things meaning, needing to be what you hear sometimes. I think one of the stronger aspects of this book is the way where Nora is at in the beginning of this, after her attempted suicide, just being lost and stuck, and, being someone who's gone through mental health struggles himself. It really is sometimes those small, simple things that, like, you forget, or, as Jeff was saying, don't quite see. So I think some of those lessons were really profound, or maybe not profound, but like it was good memory. I'm also a huge fan of these books. It's a Wonderful Life is definitely one of my favorite films. So I like some of the echoes of that. And I think my favorite quote or section of the book is towards the end, when she's talking about the paradox of volcanoes and the fact that they both bring and give life. Of once the ash cools and dies, and enriches the earth with soil. And she's like, maybe I'm a volcano, I'm not a black hole, and I can work on cultivating a forest within me. I thought that was really beautiful. So liked it. I didn't love it, but it's interesting to hear everyone else's perspectives.
Thank you, Will. Will, as a fan of the genre, mentioning It's a Wonderful Life again, are there others that stand out to you, maybe other books that kind of fall into this category that you might recommend?
Well, I didn't read Dark Matter with this book group, but I have read that, and I think that was by far and away, in my opinion, the best one in this story. Blake Crouch's follow-up, Recursion, I like that one a lot too. Not quite as much as Dark Matter. I think Palm Springs was mentioned as well. I like that. I think that's the majority of them that I really like.
Yeah, we did both Dark Matter and Recursion with Books and Bars. I like Dark Matter more than Recursion. I love that one also. I love Groundhog Day. I think it's, a film that's only grown in stature and now has become, in some ways, like It's a Wonderful Life and Back to the Future, of one that they point to as like Palm Springs is more like Groundhog Day than it is like Back to the Future or It's a Wonderful Life. It's clearly in that vein. Russian Doll is a series on Netflix that's really good with Natasha Lyonne. That's very Groundhog Day. This idea of, it's like this reincarnation aspect where you get that chance to change your mind about something, see that road less traveled. We talked about this last night a lot, and it's not that anyone necessarily doesn't like the current life they're in, but y'all have those what ifs. Like, what if I stayed at this job a little longer, or what if I went to a different school, or you kind of just want to see it. You don't want to, I don't want to lose what I have now, but you're just wondering what's the what if aspect of it. And now, of course, we have the number one sort of entertainment brand in the world, Marvel, is exploring all of this with the multiverse, right? We're seeing this idea of, in this world, this character has this, but in this world, it's totally different. It's the whole what if thing. And I'm always fascinated by it. I do enjoy that sort of thing. I don't know if it makes for the best book club or the best book club discussion, but you guys are doing pretty well so far. Todd's got his hand up again. So let's see what Todd has to say.
Yeah, I'm going to push back just ever so slightly on the thoughts of this book being simplistic. I think it's actually quite complex. The hard thing to do is to look at the little things and write about the little things that have such the big impact. It's easy to go out and say, here's this big action or this big behavior that is very demonstrable and is easy to see. Much more difficult to look at these small nuances and how much those little small nuances meant. I mean, there was a couple times that, Mrs. Elm refers back to the pawn in the chess game, the least piece,
Right.
or what may be considered the lesser piece. And I just think it was the story was complex from that sense, and it was maybe mastering the pawn, but you also saw in that evolution of it the movement from me, what's happening to me, how to, why I don't want to live or what I don't want to happen, all these regrets, to a slow evolution, which I think is not indifferent to individuals experiencing mental health challenges. How do I move from the internal self to the external self and start looking at, I want a life where my brother's not dead. So now I'm looking at others. I want a life where I can have an impact on the neighbor, or the neighbor doesn't go into the institution. And so the friend in Australia doesn't die. The focus became, I think, slowly, ever so slowly, and evolving into the what matters is what I can do with others, or what I can do then ultimately with my life, or that volcano theory. But I thought it was much more complex than what people are getting it credit for. That's all.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a lot to think about here that is complex. I listed a few of the things in my last post there in the chat. Haig writes about the whole idea of parallel universes. Thoreau's Walden. The quantum superposition. I mean, there's a bunch of ideas that are explored here. I mean, it might not be the headiest and the deepest exploration of them, but they're there. And I think he takes a light touch with how he deals with, this isn't the book to completely explore the how this is happening or necessarily the why, but it's like more of the how it would affect you and this one person that we're putting through the paces here. And, this idea that you're put into this life where you don't know what has come before. And, now you're suddenly on stage and have to give like a TED talk, or whatever, in this big speech that she was not prepared for. And it's interesting because I think the idea was, right, that if it was her best life, or the life that she was going to stay with, Nora, then it would have filled in, and she would have forgotten about the library, and then she would have kind of moved into this life, and then remembered it all. But she never gets to that point. The closest she comes to it is the one with Ash and the daughter, and she wants to make that one work, but it doesn't quite work. And I mean, maybe it wasn't the biggest surprise that the life you're currently in is the one that you should have and the one that you should live. But I think it's a nice way that he comes to it with that message.
But there goes the point. She the life she found the greatest joy with, the child and Ash and involvement, she chose to give up because of the disappointment with the neighbor and Mrs. Elm. And so it was that sacrifice, and that sense of sacrifice, that of giving self or self-sacrifice over others, which is complicated.
Yeah, definitely is. Were there any particular lives or threads that you guys that you liked more than others in the way that Haig structured this book? What did you think of the structure of jumping around in these different lives? Were there ones, that you enjoyed more than others and want to discuss? Anyone on that? Anyone? I see Donna with physical hand. I'm going with you, Donna.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say in general, one of the things about the past lives that I did enjoy was how resourceful she was about ways to figure out, to get a little bit of a grip on who she was or what she was up to or whatever. Because, that being, like you were just saying, Jeff, being just thrust into a moment in a totally different path of life. And then finding out, my gosh, I'm giving a speech and, in a few hours, or I have, to be on the beach and then realize I don't even know where I live or what I do for a job or anything when she was in Australia. And so she'd Google herself. I mean, thank goodness for modern technology helping her out. And there was this scene, I can't remember which life it was, where she would scroll through texts on somebody's phone and all that, I mean, just to kind of figure out. I thought, whoa, she had to do that all on the spot. And for somebody that, I thought, my gosh, how resourceful, because that would be a nightmare for me, I think, to be just in my, I mean, all of us, any of us that aren't really big fans of public speaking, I think that was the most terrifying one. And I kept wondering how that was going to go. And then she didn't really have to, it turned out, she didn't have to even speak on the original topic. She was able to finesse it into just a little bit of a lecture about these various things she'd learned about life and living a good life and stuff. So we had a chance to listen again to all of these, lessons learned. But I thought was pretty cleverly handled. I mean, I got a kick out of how she was going to get her way out of that situation and not totally fail ever.
How about the character that we meet that is jumping from life to life, and it's kind of he's been doing this for a while. He's a pro at it. And he's enjoying it. He kind of likes this aspect of it. We talked about him a bit last night, and someone had a really cool idea that maybe this character is actually in like a coma of sorts, like in the real world. Like, because what situation is he in? Because with Nora, we have that she attempted suicide, and she's got a few hours before she's actually dead. And that's kind of playing out in her life jumping here. And the library is kind of crumbling around her. But the character who has the video store and as his place and is just enjoying jumping from life to life. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on, what it would have been like to explore more of that storyline or other characters? Any thoughts on that? Anyone? If not, we'll come back to it because I see that Rebecca, Will, and Kevin has their hands up. Rebecca, talk to us.
I do have a thought about that other character, and it's an interesting thought. I think, they could very well both be in comas. I mean, who knows what the brain is doing when we're, unconscious or what. I dream enough in a night sometimes that I feel like, I have lived a whole week or more. One of the things that I did not like, though, is that after she met that character who had all the multiple lives, I thought, well, she's not going to go that direction. And then she absolutely went in that direction and had all these thousands of lives. And it felt like indulgent in that. I mean, yes, I totally get the wanting to explore multiple things, but it felt like this book was thinking it's very urgent that you live, you're running out of time, and yet she does thousands of lives. And so either she's really not very good at this, or she was having too much fun. I don't know. That felt like an inconsistency in the narrative. And having multiple lives, what you said about Groundhog Day struck me because that's one of my all-time favorite movies, period. And I can watch it over and over again, probably much like you can watch It's a Wonderful Life or other things, because it just hits home each time that you can have the opportunity to get better. And, you know, even if you're a jerk, you can become a better person. And I know that's kind of what this woman is doing, but she just was not nearly as engaging as Bill Murray to me, period. So I guess if she had been a stronger character, perhaps, or if she had a particular creative talent that seemed like it was, you know, because even when she was living the life of the musician, I never got that she really loved her music. I mean, she was supposed to be all about this music, but she never had any like genuine joy at that. And the whole wanting to live another person's life, you know, and be married and have a baby and all that, you know, it's a good way to teach a lesson, but how can she not now be less than satisfied with whatever happens because she's had, you know, anyway, it just, there was something missing in the structure that kept this from being as successful in my mind as it obviously is in some of yours.
Well, I think when she returns to this life, though, she won't remember. I don't think she's going to remember all of the aspects of these other lives in the Midnight Library. I think that was my take on it. That now that she chose this life, she settled back into it. Yes, she does go and see and then play chess with and have an ongoing relationship with Mrs. Elm, which, you know, it's like something sparked that inspired her. But I don't know, maybe tell me if you guys think something else, but if I'm imagining this out like a few weeks, she's not like, oh, remember when I was in the Arctic and that polar bear was there? No, she's not. She remembers that she tried to kill herself, and she's happy that she is alive, and she's really happy in this life now, and she's making the most of it. But I don't think she's thinking back to Mrs. Elm was in some weird spiritual, you know, afterlife or something with me as I'm playing chess with her. What do you guys think? Am I wrong? I'm trying to apply the rules from what I understood it from the book. And so I would get that, like, yeah, if you had a chance to live all of these lives, how could you be just satisfied if, you know, unless that's how you are satisfied, because you had a taste of all of these and you realize, you know, it's like the grass is always greener kind of thing, but there's no place like home. Click those heels together. Bring it back, people. You know, I don't know why my hand is up in the participants. I did not raise my hand, but it's like always up, and I'm always talking. So talk to me if you have other theories on. You know what? I'm going with Sally Mays here. First time in the book club. First time raising her hand. Sally, talk to us. I'm excited to hear from you.
Woo-hoo! This is so much fun. One of the things that, first off,
where are you from, Sally? Where are you right now?
Bloomington. Sitting in my life.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yep. Over by the ski jump.
Yeah, nice.
Not on the ski jump, but close by. I'm kind of with Dr. Todd. Dr. Cook. I thought this book was a whole lot more complex than some folks are throwing it out to be not. But one of the things that confused me, or I didn't see an easy way of doing it, is how she jumped from one life to another. And was it a conscious choice, or was there something saying, okay, I've gotten everything I need to know here, let's go?
Wasn't it explained that when at the point at which she knew it wasn't the right one, it would just fade out and she would disappear and go into the other one? Like they weren't wasting any time. At the soon as she realized this wasn't the right one, she was transported to a different one, or transported back to the library. That's how I read it. Anyone else on that? Does that sound about right? I'm getting thumbs up. And Donna, you have a take on it? No? Okay. Yeah, so that's what I think it was.
Yeah, I think they mentioned at one point that, you know, there was that whole backdrop of regrets. There was a lot of conversation, you know, between her and Mrs. Elm about regrets, and there was a whole book of regrets. And it seemed like there was a point where she felt a genuine regret about the life she was in, that had triggered it, you know, because she realized it wasn't just that she'd gotten what she needed out of it. I think it was that she was at a point where internally she felt it was a bad choice. It was another bad choice, and had a regret that she was there, and then boom, off she went. And so, you know, and the nature of that regret was different in the different lives. But I think we were told early on that that would happen. And
that was the trigger then?
Yeah, I think it was the moment of.
Man, would that be a cool thing for our real lives, hey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would be great.
Thank you.
There's a lot of things in this book that I would love just to be able to see, you know, or just experience it just for a little bit, maybe just in dreams or something. You know, we were talking a bit about, Rebecca, you were saying that sometimes your dreams are so extensive. And I've always heard sort of the analogy or the joke or something that, you know, you'll never bore someone faster than when you start telling them about your dream. Like nobody wants to hear it except for maybe your therapist that you're paying money to or something. But Mark, you'd appreciate this. I dreamed an improv class the other night. I dreamed that I was teaching a class, and I was like saying like really important like improv stuff. And I remember some of the people in the class and everything. And I woke up and I was like, that was weird. Like I just dreamed like I was just teaching improv again. I don't know. Like that was weird because that's like an old life of mine that I went back to. And I don't know if this book like kind of triggered it, but I literally like went back to like an old job that I used to have and dreamed I was doing it again. There you go. I don't know. Anyone else on that? I just posted in the chat free passes to see The Tender Bar, which is a new movie by George Clooney starring Ben Affleck based on a memoir. And the screening is next week here in Minneapolis. So click on that if you want to go see that movie. Feel free. I see Will has his hand back up. Will, talk to us.
One of the things I liked about I think a question ago is which life we liked the best. One of the things I liked about the progression of lives is I feel like she started living the biggest lives first, and she kind of slowly scaled down to the more mundane and realistic. So I like that trending a lot personally. I also like that this book exposed me to glaciology as a field or a thing one can study. I thought that was such a weird and specific interest for like a 14-year-old to have and want to do. So that part was really charming. As far as the other Slider character, I feel like that was, you know, meeting him and going through his cycle. I feel like that was the most important like part of her moral progression through this book, because I feel like that character was very hedonistic, or was just kind of like living for the funnest, coolest moment there. And like later on when they start like meeting up again, she starts trying to like talk about like, you know, have some of these harder questions about like what they're doing. And he like literally like cuts out middle of conversation. Like, you know, that character was like seeking a life without any conflict or pain. And I think that's when she started to realize like, I need some of this struggle to find meaning and love and purpose. Like it's not, you know, the easiest life is not the easiest to live if there's, you know, nothing pushing against you. So, yeah.
You need something pushing against you. I like that. Kevin's got his hand up. Kevin, talk to us.
Yeah, I think that the slider, Hugo, was probably my favorite part of the book. It was probably sort of the most necessary part, just because Mrs. Elm is sort of the author insert, and then Nora is supposed to be the audience or the reader insert. So it helped to have another sort of perspective on the Midnight Library from someone else. I think it would have helped to have more perspectives. I think something that was missing was someone who had a regret that they didn't want to let go of. I thought it was sort of overly convenient that all of Nora's regrets were not legitimate or were all things that she felt perfectly fine getting rid of in the end. But yeah, I thought Hugo was definitely the best part. I didn't really like the sci-fi world building that he introduced, because it's a lot of nonsense for the most part. But him as a character, I think, was a very welcome addition.
Kevin, do you have something that you like? What would be your room, Kevin? What would be your place if you had an experience like this?
I feel like it'd still have to be a library. I don't know.
Okay. I guess it's a book club. I'm going to get a lot of libraries, right? I mean, like I like the video store one too. That one spoke to me. The library and the video store, both of me. I totally get both of those. If anyone has any other sort of location that's different from that, feel free to share. I'd love to hear it. Also, The Matrix. There's another Matrix movie coming out. I just posted passes for that one. If you want to see that one on December 20th. I mean, you know what? I'm going to see it. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be good or not, but Keanu Reeves he's on another hot streak of sorts. I mean, I didn't like that last Bill and Ted so much, but anyone else that also would love to share, or maybe you don't love to share it, but you love us so much that you're willing to share, put yourself in Nora's situation. And is there something that is there a road that you didn't take that you would like to see how that goes? Maybe just bringing it up tonight, someone can help you kind of see what that would be like and make sure that you made the right choices. Mark's got his hand back up. Mark, talk to us.
Yeah, not on that question, but I think these books do a good job when you do come back to the life that you lock back into, getting you to recognize that we don't have that possibility. At maybe one or two of you do have the ability to time travel, and I'm being dismissive of that, but you know, when you're like, what about that woman if I had married that woman, or what about that place I could have lived if I could have lived there? I think the thing with Nora is, given enough time, she's going to end up having a regret and putting her back into the place where she so-called belongs. And that's kind of what the author seems to be doing here. It's like, and with the little details and with everything else, it's the small things that matter. Make the best of what you've got. That kind of message kind of resonates and comes back home, because we don't have the ability to time travel yet. So removed from that, it's the whole, if you can't be with the one you love, be the one you're with. That grand.
Love the one you're with. Yeah.
Yeah, love the one you're with. So that grand. The first book I read on this time travel from a fictional standpoint was Replay, and I really loved that book by Ken Grimwood, I believe his name is. He's passed, but it was in the 1980s that he wrote that book.
I loved that book.
Well, I picked it up 20 years later, and I didn't have the same feeling about it. I thought I had a much different experience. So like I say with this one, maybe the time travel, I'm just not where I need to be to appreciate this one. And maybe in 20 years, I'll like it more than I do now.
Isn't that interesting? So you read it when, Mark?
Ken Grimwood's book?
Yeah.
I read that probably 98 or 2000, somewhere in that range. It was already... And Rebecca, 12 years old.
I probably read it in the 80s. It was okay. And then I reread it maybe 10 years ago. And I agree, it was not the same, but I think by then that idea of reliving your life had been in so many other things that it didn't feel as fresh for me. Yeah. But I still loved what he tried to do. He was trying to figure out, he was solving a problem, and I thought he did a really good world building in that respect. You know, there were consistent rules, etc. And he wasn't trying to necessarily become a better person. He was just, anyway, I highly recommend it. I'm putting it on the sketch notes so we can all remember it.
Awesome. Replay by Ken Grimwood. All right. I don't know it. I'm interested in checking it out though. But I think it's such it's such a truism though, that there are books that I might recommend that I loved, 20 years ago, but you have to be careful, because if you haven't read it recently, and you stood up for this and said, this is something you should read, or this is great. And then the person, someone reads it now and they're like, why did you like that much? And you're like, oh, well, I guess I liked it 20 years ago. I don't know. Maybe I should revisit before I recommend, it's almost like, I don't know, times have changed and maybe there's something in there, but,
and as it happens that the time travel short story that I referenced at the top of the conversation does have a strong dream connection, Jeff. So I appreciate you dropping dreams back into that. I will share that with you, so you can take a look and give me an assessment.
I have a question for the group.
Yeah.
This is Sally.
Hi, Sally.
Would you ever participate in a time travel if you had the opportunity? And not in the extent of being able to jump from multiple lives, but picking one time in history that you would go back and that's it.
So back. So you're saying you
back or forward. Back or forward.
You can go forward, but you can only pick one. You can go
but
forward or
It's
back.
a one-way trip. It's a one-way trip.
Oh, it's one way. Okay. So you basically are giving up this current situation you're in to skip ahead or to move back. Wow. Well, I'll start. Let me just say, obviously, if you move back, and unless you're like B- time traveler, you are going to moving back. There's some advantages to you for a life. I mean, you could move back and then now I invest in Apple, you know what I mean? Or now I invest in this, and you could have a very comfortable life, perhaps financially. It's like the old Biff from Back to the Future, the sports betting, right? Who won the World Series. So you bet on those. Moving forward, now that's a dicey, scary proposition, right? I mean, that's probably more exciting in some ways because, but what if you move forward and, the people that you love are gone, obviously, and you're basically giving up the time that you have with those people now. So I guess I couldn't imagine actually giving up the current life. Like if I wanted to just visit those times and come back, it would be better. But this whole idea of moving back and doing it by myself, if you really like where you are, you'd want to try to replicate certain things, like make sure you meet the same person and, have the same kids or whatever. So I don't know. I'm going to go with Nora and stick with the current life. Anyone else? Go for it. I like how I worked that out with you all here, although I would like to go back in time and make some money. Anyone else on that? Anyone else have what haven't we brought up? Feel free to chime in about this book. Go ahead.
A replay has that whole going back in time and making money, and he does it through sports. So if you have knowledge of sports and World Series and all that kind of stuff, you'll get your experience through that book in how to go back. I want to go forward because I just want to know, and I know that it'll probably be, a bleak post-apocalyptic landscape, and I won't, survive very long. And but I have a real interest in knowing what comes next that I won't see in my natural lifetime. So I would go forward in it. I would do it tomorrow. I would hope I would have some options, but anyway.
Can I tell you something that's interesting? So I just looked up, so now that you tell me more about replay and the sports betting, I mean, that is the plot of Back to the Future, especially Back to the Future 2. And I see that it's a fantasy novel that came out in 1986. Back to the Future came out in 85. And then this book won the 88 World Fantasy Award for best novel. I don't know why it took that many years past it. So really interesting. So it says the novel has been referenced as a precursor of Harold Ramis's Groundhog Day. And it also references a 1973 short story, 1201 by Richard A. Lupoff. Well, I don't know now. Now I'm wondering, did replay, was it like all the monkeys at the typewriter are going to end up writing Macbeth or something if they do it? or, you know, was Back to the Future what inspired Replay, or did Replay somehow inspire Back to the Future too? I don't know. Really interesting stuff. Speaking of which, have you guys seen there's a Tragedy of Macbeth, directed by Joel Cohen, starring Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand. It's quite good. I gave away passes for that last week. Was anyone there? Anyone? No, I didn't see you there. You missed it. It'll be on Apple TV Plus in January, but it'll probably be nominated for some Oscars. You might want to see it before then if you can. What else haven't we talked about with Midnight Library? You read it? You wanted to hear us talk about something? Be the person to bring it up. I see that my hand is still up. I don't know why, but I'm talking. So, anyone else? Any other thoughts on it? What do you think Matt Haig was trying to say here? What's your takeaway from it? Anyone?
He was trying to say that if you sorry, I'm just jumping in. If you really look hard at what you have, it's a lot better than what you don't have. You know, so in other words, be happy with, you know, where you are. It just takes a different frame, a fresh look, you know, and in the end, life is enough. And your own unique life is what is important, not living some other version of it. So be true to yourself. I think it ends up in a very good place. I just thought it was a clunky.
Thanks, Rebecca. Anyone else? Any other things that you wanted to hear us discuss tonight about this one? Are you guys going to join us for Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller? Should we keep Zooming? There's about 15, 16 people here tonight. Would 15 people want to come back in January for more Zoom? We're meeting in person at Urban Growler now in St. Paul in the Barrel Room. You're all welcome to that also if you can make it. If you're coming from out of town, let me know ahead of time. We'll roll out the red carpet for you and make it very special.
Now that you've gone national, you can't go back. Yeah, you're national, coast to coast. You're like this celebrity figure now.
Well, thank you, Todd. Todd, you are the celebrity in this chat to me. When I see Dr. Todd, I know who is the man tonight, all the way from San Diego. Yeah. Which I believe the movie Anchorman is probably the best San Diego movie I can think of. Maybe you can think of another. Actually, a great movie shot in San Diego at the Hotel del Coronado is The Stuntman with Peter O'Toole. Do you remember this movie from the early 80s? Check it out if you like San Diego and you like the Hotel del Coronado. But yes, thank you, Todd, for saying that. That's very kind. Donna, talk to me.
One of your earlier comments, Jeff, mentioned the different kind of scientific theories and philosophies and so on that were in this book. And because she had in, one of her lives or her root life or, had studied philosophy, that kind of made sense. But I'm just curious myself about this whole idea of string theory. I'm not a scientist and I don't read a lot of scientific stuff. But those of you that do more reading in science, is it a real thing? I mean, is there such a thing? And are there different? I'd like to hear somebody talk about that a little bit, just because what was in the book was interesting, but I still feel like, is it just like something for fantasy books and movies and stuff, or is it real?
Well, it's certainly a real theory.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that have explored it. I can't speak to how real it is, or if people actually believe that it's true or accurate or anything. Can anyone here? I mean, I can go to the Wikipedia page and summarize what I'm looking at right now, but
there's some pretty serious physicists that are deep into quantum mechanics that understand it, and that's where the theories come from. I'm not versed in quantum mechanics enough to explain the math of why they're convinced it's real, but I think there are some physicists out there that would say it's not as serious a mathematical law.
It's not as serious of a mathematical law.
Well, no, it's not a theory, it's a mathematical like law or truth. Like, yeah. I believe Stephen and a few other people like are convinced they've mechanically proven that this is a reality. And so, theory versus law is, but okay. I'm only a novice and a fan of the thing, and I don't have the math to unpack what they're saying.
For all the times at Books and Bars that we have someone say, as an English major, and then they make their comment, or as a librarian, they make their comment. We don't have enough people that say, as a quantum physicist, and then they explain string theory to us. We just don't have that yet in the 15, 16 people that we had here tonight. But our goal is to get more of those people in our chat to really round it out. I will say that from what I've read, it's similar to this idea of even though we don't have proof of other intelligent life in the universe, the odds are that there is other intelligent life in the universe. Even though there isn't someone who can concretely prove it right now, necessarily. So it's like, I feel like it's similar in this situation. There's enough people that have laid out the possibility that there's a very good possibility that this is real and this is happening, but can we see it? Can we touch it? Can we taste it? Can we feel it? I haven't yet. I don't know. I haven't seen that, in the nightly news or read about it yet, but I won't be that surprised when a couple of these things do happen, and it'll be great when somehow it does. Although once someone's actually time traveling, we're in trouble. It's like the classic thing that I think he was 7 or 8 years old at the time. The old the conundrum. It's similar to the question of would you ever time travel? That Sally posed. It's like, would you go back in time and try to stop someone like Hitler? But what have we learned from all of these stories about it is that any little thing that you supposedly changes everything, right? So like, even if you change that, then maybe something else bad happens. But I remember, I don't know, my son was so young, but I don't know how we're talking about it, but he was like, yeah, I'd go back in time. And it was like, he was like, he basically said he would kill Hitler as a baby. So I'm admitting that right now in this video. I might have to edit that part, but hey, you know what? At least my kid, he's part of the greatest generation, even though he wasn't, even though, he was quite young. So thank you, Rebecca, for the sketch notes. Appreciate that. Thank you, all of you, for taking time out of your busy holiday schedule to chat with us. I look forward to seeing you again January 13th. I'll put up a Zoom. I think I shared